So, you think you know the story of the Buddha, right? A prince gives it all up to end suffering, meditates, starves himself, pushes to the absolute limit. We've all heard it. But here's a thought. What if all that legendary effort, what if that wasn't the secret? What if it was actually the one thing holding him back?
Yeah, that one question, it kind of flips the whole story on its head. It makes you wonder, maybe the path to a real breakthrough isn't always about grinding harder, right? Not more struggle, not more force. Maybe it's something completely different.
All right, so let's rewind. Before he was the Buddha, he was just a guy named Gautama. And, he was on a serious mission. He went and found the biggest, most famous spiritual gurus of his time because he was absolutely determined to figure out how to free the mind. And get this, he wasn't just a good student. The guy was a prodigy. He mastered everything they threw at him so fast and so completely that his teachers were just blown away. They actually offered to make him their partner, to lead their communities with them. I mean, he basically reached the top of the ladder, the absolute peak of what anyone knew at the time. But even up there, at the very top, he had this nagging feeling. Something wasn't right. And then it hit him, this deep realization. Sure, these advanced states of mind were incredible, no doubt, but they weren't it. They weren't the final answer. It felt more like a temporary escape hatch than a permanent solution to suffering. For him, this whole path, it was a dead end. So, what do you do when you hit a dead end? Well, he did what a lot of serious spiritual seekers did back then. He swung to the complete opposite extreme. He figured, okay, a life of luxury didn't work, the highest meditations weren't enough. So maybe the secret is to just completely conquer the body. And for 6 straight years, he put himself through just unimaginable pain. The whole idea was to break the body to set the spirit free.
Okay, and this is where the story takes a really cool turn, because hidden in the ancient text to talk about this time is a clue. It's all wrapped up in a single ancient Pali word. If you get this word wrong, you end up on a path of just endless struggle. But if you get its true meaning, the whole puzzle just clicks into place.
And that word is padana. Now, for centuries, people have translated this word in a way that totally backs up that story of struggle, of striving. But what if that translation was missing the whole point?
So the usual way it's translated is something like effort or striving. And when you hear that, you think of brute force, right? Like gritting your teeth and just pushing harder. But when you dig a little deeper into the language, you find a much cooler, more subtle meaning, placing energy forth. See, this isn't about force at all. It's about a skillful, precise way of applying your focus. Think about it. It's the difference between using a sledgehammer and using a scalpel.
Let's actually break the word down. There's this cool linguistic tool called Naruti, which is all about looking at the roots of words. So pa means forward, and tha means to place or to put. So when you put them together, padana isn't just trying hard. It's the very specific, conscious act of placing the mind forward onto something. It's all about direction and intention, not just raw power. And honestly, that little shift in meaning, it changes everything.
Ed, to make this crystal clear, the Buddha himself used this brilliant analogy, a little story about trying to start a fire. And it perfectly explains why the state of your mind is way more important than how much force you use. Okay, so picture this. You're trying to start a fire, but your piece of wood is soaking wet and still sitting in the water. It's impossible, right? You could try forever. Well, he said that's what a mind soaked in craving is like. Now, what if you take that same wet log and put it on dry land? You can rub and rub and rub, but it's still not going to light up. That's a mind that's maybe pulled away from the world on the outside, but is still kind of damp with desire on the inside. It's only when you get some dry wood on dry land, a mind that's actually free from all that wetness of craving, that the spark of wisdom can finally catch fire.
So the point is super clear, right? The problem isn't that you're not trying hard enough. You could be the strongest person in the world trying to start that fire, but if the wood is wet, you're gonna fail. Period. The internal conditions have to be right first. You got to dry out the wood.
And for 6 long years, that's exactly what Gautama was doing. He was trying to light a fire with a soaking wet log. He was using every ounce of force he had, basically living out that mistaken, brute force idea of padana.
I mean, the way the texts describe what he went through, it's just brutal. They talk about him holding his breath until the pressure in his head felt like someone was taking a sharp drill to his skull. He said it felt like a butcher was slicing up his stomach. This was maximum effort, maximum striving, taken to the extreme.
So there he was, basically a skeleton, on the brink of death. And in that state, he finally had a moment of total clarity.
He realized that no matter how much pain he put himself through, he wasn't one step closer to real insight. This whole path of brutal, forceful striving, it was a complete failure. He had given it absolutely everything he had, and it got him nowhere.
And then, right there, in that moment of complete and utter exhaustion, something just shifted. A memory popped into his head, something from way back in his childhood. He remembered sitting under a tree while his dad was working, and just effortlessly, spontaneously slipping into this state of deep, blissful meditation. There was no fight, no strain, no forcing it, just this incredible feeling of peace and joy.
And that memory, it sparks this totally revolutionary question in his mind. See, for years, he had been operating under the idea that any kind of pleasure, any happiness was a bad thing, an obstacle you had to crush. But this feeling from his childhood, it was different. It wasn't about craving or wanting stuff. It was just pure, wholesome, peaceful. And he asked himself, why on earth am I afraid of a happiness like this? And boom, that was it. He realized this blissful state wasn't the enemy at all. It was the path.
That was the moment, the huge turning point. He finally got the secret. It wasn't about trying harder. It was about the right kind of effort. It wasn't about punishing your body. It was about creating a healthy, balanced mind. You know, making sure the wood was dry so the fire of wisdom could actually start.
So what did he do? He accepted a simple meal, ending his 6-year fast. And his 5 buddies, the other ascetics who'd been so impressed by his extreme self-denial, they were disgusted. They thought he totally sold out, that he was giving up and going back to an easy life. So they just left him. Little did they know, he was closer to the finish line than he'd ever been.
Now, with some food in his system, with a healthy body, and a mind that was settled and calm and focused, he sat down to meditate. And all through the night, his insight just got deeper and deeper. In the first part of the night, he remembered all his past lives. Then, in the middle part, he saw clearly how karma works, how actions lead to consequences. And finally, just as dawn was breaking, he completely wiped out the deepest roots of suffering in his own mind.
As the morning star appeared, his mind was totally, completely free. He knew it with this absolute certainty. He'd done it. The goal was reached. The whole cycle of suffering was over. And think about that. This wasn't the payoff for 6 years of brutal, violent effort. It was the result of a single night of skillful, focused energy applied when the conditions were finally right.
So this incredible ancient story leaves us with a pretty relevant question for today, doesn't it? In our own lives, in our own struggles, whether it's at work, in our relationships, or just trying to be better people, where are we trying to start a fire with wet wood? Where are we just throwing brute force and grit at a problem when what we really need to do is step back, change the conditions, dry out the wood, and then place our energy forward with skill and precision?